Gestalt psychology arose out of Berlin during the mid-20th century as an important cognitive view on the philosophy of perception. Its core principles illustrate how there is more going on to the formation of perception than the mere identification of objects in our visual field. Gestalt psychology's simple observation that the perception of something is dependent on one's interpretation of that thing shattered the mold. Its theory is perception is the organization of the whole, and dependent upon the perceiver's unconscious, top-down interpretation of visual information. Take, for example, this Necker cube. Without changing the visual arrangement of the cube, one could perceive it in multiple ways. One with the facing side of the cube jutting up to the right, or one with the facing side protruding down to the left. Neither interpretation is more correct than the other, but we, the perceivers, organize our perception of it in one way or the other. Gestalt principles demonstrate the different ways we unconsciously organize visual info effortlessly for our perception. Similarity is the principle that describes how we tend to patternize objects and perceive connections between things. Proximity demonstrates how we tend to group together objects that are close to each other. Good continuation is a blatant observation to how we constantly perceive obstructed objects as one entity rather than two separate things. Closure illustrates how we can perceive loosely bounded objects as being intact and perceived as a whole. These are just a few Gestalt principles that illustrate how the perceptual whole is not merely the sum of its parts. Our perception of an event can go beyond the objective characteristics of the event itself. As important as this is, notice, however, that these principles are only effective at describing perception, but they don't offer any sort of explanation of perception. The focal concerns about perception are explanations to what it is, how it operates, and why it functions as it does. Gestalt psychology comes up short in doing any such thing, but nonetheless, it itself shapes the way in which we perceive perception.